Susan Lee, the member for Farrer, great to have you with us on Flow today.
Great to be with you.
Now, we love our sport at Flow, so we thought we'd talk first of all with you about Johnny Longmire, the Swans coach. He's mentioned you've had a bit to do with this pre-season game, the derby between the Giants and the Swans at Albury.
Yes, Ricky, I caught up with John Longmire, who of course comes from this region, Corowa, and has never forgotten country football and the need to involve our local towns, who, by the way, contribute some incredible players to the AFL. So we had a chat, and he indicated that the Swans were keen to come out of Sydney for a practice game, and indeed that's exactly what they're doing, 25th of February at the Lavington Sports Ground, and so far 3,000 tickets have been sold. So that's pretty good news for our region. We have a lot of Swans fans. It's a Swans and GWS game, but just fans of football.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you play a role in that? He suggested you might have helped grease the wheels a little bit to make it happen.
Oh, look, I think I probably just made the point of, how much we love the team here, how important it is for us not to be left out when it comes to seeing our favourite players, and just had a bit of a chat with him. And Lavington Oval, of course, is now in ship shape after some upgrades from the federal government, and so it's a perfect location for the game.
All right, well, we have been celebrating the Queen's Platinum Jubilee recently, and there's a tree planting program for those interested in playing their part, I guess, not only doing something for the environment, but recognising the Queen's achievement as well.
Well, that's right, planting trees for the Jubilee. It provides $100,000 of grant funding for each electorate, so each local member of Parliament across Australia has, if you like, an allocation of $100,000 to go towards applications that come into them, ranging from $2,500 to $20,000, groups, organisations, schools, land care. There'll be all sorts of people who want to take advantage of this, and they will be able to plant trees for the Jubilee program. And the trees don't have to particularly mark the Queen's 70 years, but they certainly will help our local regions remember the anniversary if they want to. But in any case, trees have a long-lasting and really important connection with the community. So I think it's a great program from that perspective too.
Yeah, I think some of those river red gums probably lived a lot longer than not just the Queen, but her parents as well around your electorate.
Indeed they do. In fact, Her Majesty has planted 1,500 trees during her time as Queen, and when I heard that number I thought that's not very many, and I asked to have it checked, but it's actually only 1,500. So where we've got them in Australia, I think there's probably 15 or 16. They're pretty special, and I mean, I think that 70 years on the throne is quite remarkable.
Well, it's pretty hard for her to put her foot through a shovel and get into, especially in some soils in Australia, so we're giving her a helping hand, I suppose.
Indeed we are.
Now, coming to helping hands, recently there's been some announcements about some good water funding projects, and indeed a comment from you, if you don't mind, just about the health of the River Murray at this point in time.
Well, the River Murray is running a banker pretty much up and down the length of it, and some of that is water that's being delivered to our farmers, but most of it is no longer those water orders. We finished the summer planting, and it's just simply that the system is doing so well when it comes to rainfall in the upper catchment. But, rivers need work, I always say. Our Commonwealth Environmental Water Holder is always looking at how to allocate environmental water to improve the health of rivers, even in a wet year like this year. And, I noticed there was some suggestion that there'd be black water coming down the Darling River, so even in a good year you can still have black water, you can still have fish deaths, and you can still have problems. But what the Murray-Darling Basin Authority is doing is managing the system for everyone. It's not always perfect, but I certainly love it in a wet year.
Yeah, and I think the residents of Broken Hill have got that pipeline now as well for fresher water up to them as well.
Well, having represented Broken Hill in the past, I know how poor the water quality was and how much better it is now by comparison. And I also understand how people in the far west, Broken Hill, Menindee, are very keen to see the Menindee Lakes flourish, to see water down the Anna Branch, which is a part of it's obviously an Anna Branch of the Murray that doesn't always flow out of the Darling, but right now it is. So I hope as many tourists who can't travel overseas and that actually do want to come and have a look at the natural landscapes of Australia come out and have a look at these water flows in the far west of our state of New South Wales, because it's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, certainly as international borders reopen, a good tourist attraction in your electorate. Talking about koalas in your environmental portfolio as Minister, first of all, help us out a little bit. There's a bit of a division, if you like, no clear line in the sand, but the koalas of the sort of south are a bit different to the ones that are now rated as threatened species.
I recently listed the koalas of Queensland, the ACT and New South Wales as endangered. They were previously vulnerable, so I've uplisted them. We've got concerns following the bushfires, and a lot of them are vulnerable to disease. So we're concerned about those populations, but we're also optimistic about what we can do with them going forward. However, of course in Victoria there's what's called the southern koala, which is larger and it's furrier. It's a bigger animal and it's got those sort of big fluffy ears, whereas the eastern states koala from Queensland and northern New South Wales is a lot smaller. The Victorian ones are not under threat, but their genetics are not as good. And of course there never were koalas in South Australia or WA. I know there are some on Kangaroo Island and I know there are some in zoos in South Australia, but they were actually never endemic to that state.
That's quite interesting, actually. There's a bit of an effort from local nurseries to get people to plant manna gums to encourage koalas in South Australia, for instance. But
and there's nothing wrong with that, and they'll certainly set up home there. Although koalas are quite fussy about what they eat, and it's quite a delicate art to introduce them to areas where they haven't been. And I know sometimes their numbers do get rather high, but what we're focusing on with all of the funding, $74 million in total that I've allocated for koalas, is making sure that we have the strongest genetics for our koalas going forward to keep them healthy and to restore some of their habitat. When I think about the amount of mail I get from all over the world, I can tell you that the number one item on correspondence is from overseas is our koalas.
Yeah, the Environment Protection Authority came out with something, I think it's today or yesterday, regarding the number of threatened species in the state rising, with 1,000 native plant and animal species and 112 ecological communities listed as threatened, and they're listing land clearing as a reason for that. It's a tricky topic, isn't it, when you've got farmers out there that are doing some great work for the environment as well?
It is, and the whole land clearing debate stems from the fact that when Europeans arrived here just over 200 years ago, they cleared an awful lot of country, and we're not going to get back to what it was pre-European settlement. But what we do understand is if we work with Indigenous Australians, we can manage the landscapes for fire, and we have to protect core areas of habitat and not clear any more significant areas of habitat. From the farmer's perspective, sometimes they clear areas that have always been cleared on their properties that are regrowth, and sometimes they feel that that should be in a different category, and I understand that. So from the perspective of the Commonwealth's environmental law, we look at all of the species and determine what their needs are and assess habitat accordingly, because it could be a koala, it could be a bird or any of our small marsupials, or it could be what we call an ecological community, which is in fact the forests or the grasslands. So we look at the species itself, and if you're undertaking a significant development that affects that species, you have to offset it. So people should not assume that land can be cleared and nothing done in return. You often have to give back much more to make sure that you look after that landscape into the future.
Now, Susan, are we going to see you running again for Farrer? Look, there's this thing about preselection bobbling around. Can you put some facts into the deliberations about that in the public space?
Absolutely. I've put my nomination in, and I await to hear further news, and I expect to be the candidate, and I'm really looking forward to putting my name on the ballot paper, along with many others, for the people of Farrer to actually make that ultimate decision about who they would like to represent them in the next term of Parliament.
It looks like you've got some help from the Prime Minister's end in terms of the party deliberations. It looks like some federal intervention might occur.
Well, the Prime Minister's made it clear he's very supportive of my being the candidate, and with the perspective of all of our government, it is we think that the country is better off with a Liberal national government, and that includes me as a senior female cabinet minister in that government. But ultimately, every election is the will of the people, and that's what really counts. Putting putting myself before the people who have a chance to vote for me.
And as federal parliament winds up, are there concerns about what the Labor Party offers by contrast to your government?
Look, totally. I mean, I would say that while there is lots of conversations about small things, scandals, gossip, odd bits and pieces, whenever I go out into the communities that I represent, they talk about the cost of living, they talk about coming out of COVID, they talk about the job that they would like or the job that they don't have or what they would like to see their children do, and they're concerned about the economy working for them. And I think that that's a good thing, and I know that I always trust the people. They always have the best response to a question that I might ask them. What is important to you? What would you like to see your local member doing for you? And, and I'll be very frank and I ask them to be very frank and fearless in their response, and I listen carefully. So, when it comes to the economy, to the security of our country, to the future of our children, I can stand up in any forum and make the case that the Liberals and Nationals will do the best job.
Well, Susan, thank you very much for your time today. Appreciate it. Look forward to talking to you again soon.
It's a real pleasure, Ricky. Take care.